Welcome to the Light Up podcast. I am your host, Amy Wilkinson. I'm an intuitive guide and soul mentor, and through this podcast, you will receive conscious conversations, powerful downloads, and soul-stirring activations that will both support and inspire you to tap into your intuition, follow that higher calling, and live a life aligned with your soul. Because you are here to co-create a life rich in abundance, freedom, and deep joy, and to unleash who you truly came here to be. And we're here to help you discover how to access that. So let's dive on in and light up. Hey guys, welcome back to Light Up. So thrilled to have you here. Just a little reminder before we dive into this episode, I would so very much appreciate it if you could follow or subscribe to whatever platform that you might be listening to this on. This really helps. But also, if you feel to share it with someone in your world who you feel that these transmissions or any of these conversations may resonate with, that really helps my vision, my mission, which is to spread light throughout the world and to inspire people to find the light within them and to light themselves up by who they are being. So the idea with these podcast episodes is that they act as a reminder and as a catalyst for your growth and your expansion and your awakening that will hopefully meet you wherever you're at on this journey. And to remind you, because I love the reminders, that you're not alone. And the reminders are just a reflection, because we know this deep in our soul. And so if what I'm speaking about is resonating with you, it's because there is a connection there. It's because it's striking a chord in you where you already know this to be true. And I feel like we can't hear these reminders enough, and they're a calling home. And this brings us beautifully into what this episode, what this transmission is about, which is alignment. And you know, I find that this word alignment is quite, it's thrown around a lot, let's say, in the personal development space. And you know, for some people, it can even be quite triggering. It can bring up some shame. And this might be if we are giving ourselves a hard time, if we get a sense that we're not in alignment, or it can be confusing if we don't know how to get in alignment and what does this really mean. And, you know, the purpose of this conversation is to perhaps debunk some of the energy around it, which might feel hard, or which might feel like this is just another externalized process. And it gets to be a lot simpler. And that's what I love about this work and about these conversations, is we can make, as humans, we feel like we need to make things hard. We're married to this idea that things need to be hard. And really, it's so much simpler when we just take a moment to look within and to see what's there. And we have all those answers. And really all that I'm just doing, and this is the same in the work that I do with my clients, is this pointing back home. It's helping you to see what's already there, what's waiting to be acknowledged and recognized. And this is really, for me, what alignment is about. And I want to speak to that today. And this is the real kind of fundamental, beautiful work that I get to do with women. And it's powerful. It's really powerful. And I find it really accelerates you down a path that, let's say this path is your highest timeline, which we naturally move down when we feel like we are in alignment with the truth of who we are. So I want to talk about alignment as being a conscious choice, which we all have access to, which is available to all of us in any given moment. And there's a clear pathway we can take, we can choose to take, where our alignment becomes this remembrance, a remembrance of who we are, a connection back home. And I want to speak a bit more about that and how we can keep choosing this for ourselves day in, day out, and what that means. So for me, the word alignment came up quite predominantly a couple of years ago. This was the beginning of 2023. And I want to just start by sharing my experience with this. So each year, for me personally, I have a practice where sometime around the early parts of the year, I don't force it, I let this find me, which is a word or two which I feel sets somewhat of a tone or a theme for the energy of the year, which is a lot around my own lessons, the things that I need to be able to access within myself in order to grow. So, for instance, the two words that came to me at the beginning of this year were play, which was actually a little bit surprising. It was play or fun. It was one of the two, but I find that they're much kind of one and the same. And then the second word was abundance. Abundance I resonated with. I was on this path of wanting to generate and cultivate more abundance and what that meant to me. And play was an interesting one. And what I came to realize is it's this real dance of the two, and how play becomes this portal to abundance, how play brings us into these high vibrational states, which, by the way, is why I am running a retreat in November later this year, which is called Joy, and all about accessing the joy vibration and what that then allows for us. So that's going to be magic. If you're interested, you can check out the retreat page on my website. So for 2023, it was a personal year of 7. So if you know numerology, and I'm no numerology expert, but I do connect in each year with what that vibration is, what the energy is from a numerology perspective, what my personal year is. And for this particular year, it was a 7. And for me, that felt a lot about self-reflection and introspection, and this calling into alignment. So it wasn't a surprise for me that the two words that came in very strong were alignment and expansion. And again, what I later came to discover, it was this calling into my alignment that was then going to pave the way for expansion. So alignment almost became this requirement in order for me to really experience the expansion that I was seeking. And I had some quite big goals at the beginning of this year. And one of them was to transition more into my soul work, was to sell the business that I'd been operating for 15 years. And, I had some quite big dreams around that I wanted to bring into form. And so this calling to come back into what true alignment for me was, it was almost as if the universe was saying, this is what we're asking of you. If you want to go to that next level of expansion, this is what is being asked of you. And I speak about this a bit in terms of supporting women to move to that next version of themselves so they can access that next level of expansion or abundance or impact or freedom, whatever it is that they're desiring. Because there's no change without change. So if we want something new for ourselves, if we want to go to that next level of evolution or growth or expansion, let's say, because a lot of the people called into my world are seeking expansion on some level in their life. But in order to do that, in order to experience that, we need to change our state a little bit. We need to make these new conscious choices around really becoming fully tapped into, resonant with the highest vibration of who we are. So this was the calling for me in this particular year. And I knew then that I needed to prioritize alignment, whatever that meant for me, whatever that felt like for me, and also what it no longer meant for me. So it was this transition, this shift that I needed to become consciously aware of. Now, for many of us, we're recovering people pleasers, and I was certainly no exception. And this had become clearer to me over the past few years, particularly when I started to dive into my counseling studies, what I met along the way, let's say the roles that I was playing, the versions of me that I was presenting to the world and in relationships, which was not congruent with the me of me. So I had this clever ability, which was unconscious for most of my life until it became conscious, to shapeshift, to change who I needed to be in order to gain the approval of others. Now, you may relate to this because many of us do this all the time, every day. We think we somehow, and again, it can be very subconscious, so it can sneak in, we need to change or we need to be someone else because on a deep level, we don't feel like we are enough, or it's not safe to be who we are as we are. Because what we are seeking always as humans, what's wired into our nervous system and into our behavior, is this need for safety. I've spoken about this before. And this need for approval, and it's the approval that gives us safety. Under no circumstances do we want to be rejected or outcast. And this is so ingrained in our being. It comes through ancestors, it comes through generational lines, it comes from past life, and it's very, very real. And it can dictate this need for approval and safety, which is linked to survival, really, if we go back further. It's so very prevalent in the way that we are operating in the world, in the way in which we might be holding ourselves back from wanting to be visible because we are so worried about how we're going to be received, how we're going to be accepted, because that acceptance is so important. Okay, so that's just a little bit of backstory there. And I was aware, of the way that I was limiting myself by being codependent on what other people thought of me for my own approval. And I knew this year that needed to go. I needed to set that down if I was going to expand to this next level. And level might not be the best way to describe it. It's kind of non-linear, but I just knew that there was more for me on the other side of moving beyond these self-limiting practices and beliefs that were keeping me stuck and that were holding me back. And I can say, it was challenging because part of what I knew I needed to do that year in order to be in alignment was, it meant when I was saying yes to things, to people, to invitations, to opportunities, it needed to be a full body resonant yes. And that my no's weren't to be questioned. Right? It's that saying that if it's not a hell yes, it's a fuck no. And that was where it was at for me. That I could no longer squeeze into situations where I felt like I couldn't be all of me. And I'll explain a little bit about this and about what I've come to understand and really where the work lies here. It's in understanding these key aspects, or these, let's say, 2 aspects of ourselves. We have many, many different aspects of ourselves, but there are some key prominent ones here which can really determine where we're operating from and what we're allowing ourselves to receive and to access in life. And they are, firstly, the wounded aspect of us, the wounded self, or you might even have it referred to as the wounded feminine or the protective part of you. And when we're coming from and identifying with that aspect of ourself, fundamentally, we don't believe that we are whole. We forget that we're whole when we're operating from the wounded self. And as the wounded self, we're always looking outside of ourselves for what is it that will make us feel whole. So essentially, we are creating from a place of lack. And then we're very much hooked into what our needs are, because we believe that we're always needing something outside of ourselves to make us feel the wholeness that we are seeking, because we are always seeking and moving towards things that are going to make us feel whole. And we can't deny that. We might try to deny that, but that's what's there. So how this shows up in our humanness and in our behaviors and in our relationships is focusing and putting a lot of energy into what other people think about us. We get so invested in the reaction of what other people think of us over our own peace, our own happiness, because it can be so exhausting wearing all the different hats and being different versions of ourselves to try to please others, which is that codependency of my happiness is based upon you approving me. And that's fundamentally what it's about. So there's a deep fear here, a fear of not feeling safe being who we are. And this can be very old fear. It can go back years. I won't go too deep, but it can go back past lives, and it can be, it can come down from ancestors and so forth. So arises this need for us to be protected from what could come in. We're always looking, our nervous system is always looking at ways that it can feel safe, and it has its certain set points. Our ego is looking for ways that it protects us, that it needs to protect us, and its way of doing that is shape-shifting, let's say, or people-pleasing, or holding ourselves back from being visible, or expanding in our work, or using our voice in the way that we're designed to be in our truth. So there's a lack of steadiness of who we are. So we're constantly looking out. And this is just a paradigm that we have been programmed into operating from for most of our life. So if you resonate with this, and maybe you're on the other side of this, maybe you've healed this wounded self, or you've integrated this wounded self, you've developed a different relationship where that part of you is not ruling, it's not in the driver's seat. We can still have it. It's important that we still have it, because let's be honest, fear is needed. We need to be able to have those parts of us to keep us safe when we require it, when there is actual, literal danger. What is perceived, however, as dangerous for us goes well beyond what this system was designed for. In our modern day, it might be getting yourself on an Instagram live, starting a podcast, having a conversation with a friend or with a coworker or with a boss where you're needing to be in your truth. It might be saying no to a toxic relationship, or leaving a relationship, or creating a new business. Right? These are all things that can trigger us into a response that requires us to be protective when we don't need to be, when we are coming from a more harmonious, whole aspect of ourselves. And this is the wise part of us. This is, let's say, the wise aspect of us, or the divine feminine, right? That we are moving towards, that we are really leaning into in this paradigm that we are entering into now. And thank goodness for that, because it is beautiful. So our wise aspect, this is our connection to all that is. It's the self with a capital S. It's the remembrance of who we are before we were given a name, and before we felt like we needed to adopt in the various roles and put on the different skins in order to feel safe. So when we come back home into this alignment of who we are, we remember that we're actually whole right now, exactly as we are. And that the journey is less about becoming, which we think it is, becoming a better someone, becoming someone else, and rather about unbecoming all of the versions of ourselves we thought we needed to be to gain the approval, which for us equated to safety and certainty. So when we are who we are, as we are, it feels unsafe for many of us when we haven't been that before. So this is a process, and it's really this inward journey back home. And when we can come back home and utilize whatever processes and practices bring us back home, and we've all had this experience when we've just felt that deep peace. And maybe it's meditation that brings you back home. Maybe it's dance or movement, or running or walking in nature. Maybe it's yoga. Maybe it's journaling. Right? It's this conscious reunion with the part of us who remembers to remember that we are whole, just as we are. And when we remember this, we realize that we don't actually need anyone else's approval. That actually the thoughts, opinions, beliefs of others actually have nothing to do with us. Like, this is so important. And that in actual fact, the only acceptance that we require, the only approval that we require is the approval of ourselves. We're the only one we need to convince. This is how simple it can become. And we spend so much energy. It's quite exhausting thinking that we need to convince others of our worth or of our value, of who we are. When we change the tide, and when we first make ourselves visible to ourselves, when we first approve and accept and love of ourselves, and I know that that can sound really cliche, maybe a little cringy, but it's true. When we do that first, we find this place where we are no longer occupying any energy with how we are being perceived or received. And honestly, moving beyond these stumbling blocks is what's allowed me to grow in my business, is what's allowed me to get on a platform such as this, which I would not have been able to do a few years ago. There's no way. The only person who is judging you is you. People are concerned with worrying about what everybody else thinks. And when we find this place of peace around it, people are going to think what they want to think. People are going to judge however they want to judge and then move on and judge someone else. And that's just the cycle and the human nature and how things are. But the more that you can value who you are right now, the more that you can come back home to wholeness, you realize that none of that actually has impact on you. Really. Because in your wholeness and in that wise aspect of yourself, you know that you're not going to be for everyone. I know that. And that is the most freeing and liberating thing, because I also know that those who are meant for me, who are meant to be in my life, who I'm meant to serve, the clients, will see me as they see me. Will value me as they value me. And will be in my world if they're meant to be in my world. But the worst thing that I can do for myself and for them is to be someone that I'm not. And so this is this beautiful authenticity piece. This is our alignment. This is who we are. We don't need anyone else to co-sign our actions, our choices, which is so often what we do when we're operating from our wounded self. And I identified with this for so long that when I really tapped this, when I really became aware of the ways in which I was holding myself back and playing small, it was almost a grieving process that happened, because the first thought that I had was, I don't know who I am not being this version of me, not operating from this version of me. And so it's like what Ram Dass says, we're all here walking each other home. And this is true. When we come home to ourselves, when we allow ourselves to move and to be led from that place, everything we need is there for us. Everything that is an alignment for our highest good comes into play and comes into focus. So to start with, it might be confronting to make this transition. And from what I've experienced, if you can find someone to support you to be able to poke holes in the stories and in the limited beliefs and into the patterning and into the ways in which we keep ourselves without even realizing. And I see this a lot, but if you can have someone to support you and poke those holes, they're going to deflate. Those beliefs, those ways of operating, those stories, they're going to deflate pretty quickly. And then we can start to see the ways that we've been holding ourselves back from identifying with these lies as if they are truth. And then we can move forward. Because those stories no longer have such a hold on us. They no longer rule us. They no longer limit our capacity. And we can find this place where we accept every part of who we are. We accept the wounded self, but we're just not giving it as much ruling. We're going to get it out of the driver's seat because it's been in there for too long. And this is a beautiful practice. And there's a bit of a death that occurs here. But you know what the death is of? It's the ego. It's the death of the limited in order to land into the unlimited. And we still need the ego. Ego is still there. We still need these parts of ourselves, but we just find that little place for them where they feel validated. And then we choose to move from this whole, wise, fierce, loving place that is who we are. And when we finally do that, when we finally make that transition and no longer choose to limit our capacity, we meet courage within us. There's a fierceness. There's both a strength and a peace. And then what happens is we start to be able to move forward in the ways that we never have before. We never would have allowed ourselves before. We start to feel and align with our true self, our soul, which is connected to all there is. And this is when we meet the vastness and the unlimited. If we're willing to come home and rest and be who we are. So that's the unveiling, my friends. And when we discover that this wholeness is actually everything that we've been looking for outside of ourselves, that it's been hidden in plain sight all along, that's where our alignment is. And when we find that, it feels so good that we quickly become aware of the ways in which maybe each day we still let ourselves be pulled out of alignment into distortion, and there's no shame around that. That happens. Maybe it's the thoughts, the fear, the overwhelm, the things that just naturally pull us out. But we become aware. And then we can just move back, keep moving back then on course and into alignment by the new choices that we make, by the ways that we advocate for ourselves, by the new, braver stories that we tell ourselves. So I just love this process. I love this work because there's too many of us for far too long that are holding ourselves back, that are standing there on the ledge going, no, I can't do it because I'm so petrified of being rejected. But if you accept yourself fully, there's no way you can be rejected from anything when you're home, when you are home within yourself. And so we feel then that actually the safest thing we can do, the safest place we can go, is back home and continue to be pointed back home, back to what alignment feels like for us. And that's not only the most loving thing you can do for yourself, but it's the most loving thing you can do for those around you, because you give them permission to be all of who they are. And we are all connected. When one of us rises, the whole tide of the ocean rises. We're all waves of the one ocean. So we support each other to do that. Okay, so the invitations from this podcast are: how much can you connect to the part of you that's already whole, the you of you, every day? And what is it that keeps bringing you back there? What are the practices? What are the tools? And this is where we need to be, because it's our wholeness that we create from, not our lack, not our neediness, but our wholeness. We then become a magnet. We magnetize things that are matched for that are on the frequency of that. And when we let ourselves reside in this place, we always know what our soul assignment is. And it then becomes harder to choose anything else but ourselves. I promise you that. So the question is, can you find the courage to choose your alignment no matter what, even if it scares you, even if it places you into discomfort, knowing that it's actually the safest thing that you could experience for yourself. It's actually the only thing that is known and true. Nothing outside of you can make you feel whole, not one thing. How could it when you're already whole? And you're choosing your alignment from there. You're choosing your expansion. You're choosing your abundance from your authenticity and from your integrity. And that, my friends, is your job. This is your soul assignment. This is why we are here. So please never underestimate the power of going within. Find the practices that light you up, that enable you to do that. Find the support people. If you want to work with me, this is the stuff we do and more to get you to that next level of expansion, to help you to tap into the you of you, and to then go to that next level of impact and value and abundance that you are here for. Nothing changes unless we change. And then we take steps along that new path. But there is this version of you, this aligned version of you, and she is calm and clear and present and free and expansive. And she is just waiting for you to meet her. I hope this helps. Please, as I said, share it if it speaks to you. Review it if you love it. If you share it on Instagram, I will, and tag me, I will share it as well. This connects us all. We're not meant to do this alone. Also, check out my Light Path collective membership, where we get even deeper into these conversations. You become a part of it. You get the opportunity to be coached by me and the guests that I bring on board as well. We're going to have so much fun with this. It starts in a few weeks' time, so make sure you get online and sign up for the founding membership, because it's so valuable. And this is open to anyone who feels a calling in their soul to expand, to be of service, to elevate their impact in this world, and to remember who they are, because we get to remember, and it's such a beautiful reunion. I'll dive more into this in upcoming episodes, but that's it from me for now. Have yourself the most gorgeous day. Hi, beautiful one. Thanks for making it to the end of another episode of Light Up. If you would like to receive some freebies, make sure you check out my website, thelightplace.com.au. You can access a Magnetize Your Dream Life guide, which is a manifestation guide, as well as a beautiful meditation and activation of your light body, which is a great daily practice to do. All of these you can access for free on my website, thelightplace.com.au. And remember, you can also join the Light Path Collective, my membership platform, where you can be a part of these processes and activations and conversations. It's here to support you on your journey of the light path, this calling to expand, to awaken, and to grow in your worth and your impact. As you do that alongside other like-minded women and conscious souls, we rise together and you receive beautiful guidance and support from me and the other leaders in the collective who will be coming in for our fortnightly calls. We start early May, but please join in April and you receive a founding member rate, which is of incredible value. Okay, that's it from me. Thank you so much for being a part of this transmission. Lots of love.